Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Will, and I'm joined by my co-host over here, the Greeze. Say hello, Greeze.
What's up, everybody? Now, listen, if you are watching this, hang in there for 30 minutes. We have a ton to talk about, so this is not like we're talking about one thing, but over the next 30 minutes, like, this is a big news week.
Yeah, we got some big news. That's right. So we're going to start right into it. We're pouring ourselves a little Calumet 15 to do a palate warmer, 105 proof.
Yeah.
So
palate.
Here's what's going on. If you've been getting probably push notifications if you follow any sort of news organization or have their app downloaded about the tariff situation. This is something we've talked a little bit about of some fears in the bourbon industry about tariffs, how it could affect international sales. And over the weekend, as of the date we're recording this, President Trump on a Saturday or Sunday announced or signed that 25% tariff was going to go into effect on Mexico, Canada, and a 10% tariff on China. Now,
it's like, I don't want to mess too much with China.
Yeah, but that's a blanket one. That's across the board.
Oh, that's bigger.
So what we're looking at here, though, is now that tariffs are starting, we know that during the first administration that Europe did retaliatory tariffs, as well as Canada, on American-made spirits. It's a big export industry. And so immediately after the announcement of this, the tariffs were supposed to go into effect on February 4th, on Tuesday. Immediately after, some Canadian provinces started announcing that not only were they weren't going to do retaliatory tariffs, they were fully going to pull American spirits from their shelves. Now, these are government-owned outlets, retail outlets in Canada.
And I think it is responsible for like over $1 billion of alcohol sales.
That's correct. Yeah, it's about $1 billion. It's $965 million worth of American alcohol is sold annually in Canada. That is 3,600 different products. So not just American whiskey. But the Liquor Control Board of Ontario said it will take U.S. products off the shelves tomorrow. That was on the date of publication of this, which would have been February 4th. And then they also, British Columbia and Nova Scotia, also did a similar move that would pull American liquor from provincially, the provinces, owned stores. And Chris Swanger, which is a heck of a name, of the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, responded saying that the latest round of retaliatory measures were extremely disappointing and counterproductive, urging the two North American neighbors to reach an agreement. Now, we were all prepared to talk about this. News moves quickly.
Breaking news.
So in the time from this afternoon when we were prepping this show, talking about this, and this evening recording a phone call between the outgoing Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and the current President of the United States, Donald Trump, occurred, and they have put in place a 1-month pause on the implementation of these tariffs to try and work a broader deal. The Justin Trudeau announced like a $1.5 billion initiative to help secure the northern border between America's northern border, their southern border, because there is concern that it's a much easier border to cross. That has also been exploited for drug trafficking as well. That was one of the conditions and issues going on. So
I have a
question. 1-month pause on American tariffs as they try to work out a deal.
Now, that's going to greatly affect whiskey in the way that if you've got a company that's pulling in almost $1 billion of American spirit product.
It's not one company, though. Yep. You're talking about their government would pull in that much, but it would
one entity moving in an accord is what I'm saying. And you pull that off, you're going to have so much whiskey flooding back into America to the point of we might see so fast things on the shelf. Yeah. I mean, like within I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months, like something like that. Now,
here's another way to look at that, though.
I want
to counter that real quick, though.
Okay.
Because it is based off this article. They do about $1 billion in all of Canada, and there are 3,600 U.S. products. Mm-hmm. If you do simple division, $1 billion worth of sales divided by 3,600. Obviously, some are going to have higher, some are going to go lower. So let's just say this is an average, $277,000 worth of sales per product.
Mm-hmm.
When you put it that way, it doesn't seem like that big of a thing for an individual product.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
If you were to take
You're
an extra $200,000 worth of, let's just say, Jack Daniel's, I'm sure that's probably one of the better selling American whiskeys in Canada just because of global recognition of the brand. It's also 80 proof, which is actually on par with many Canadian whiskeys. So it's kind of a similar, I would think, culturally. So to me,
softies
right there, it doesn't seem like that big of an industry.
But we don't necessarily know, like, that's an average, right? And we
I don't know how much Fireball they're consuming. You know,
let me go ahead and tell you, they ain't drinking tequila up there, Will.
I don't know if they are not. I know our good friend Andrew West does.
It's the other border.
Well, no, it's still all of Canada.
Yeah.
I think he's in British Columbia or Ontario. He's in one of they don't think they have 5. Odds are right now, Nova Scotia he's not in. So that means maybe 4. I'm probably wrong. There could be more than 4. 4 left. If you take British Columbia and Ontario, he's probably in one of those. He does drink those.
I have a really
That's
quick
one consumer.
So everybody talking about the tariffs is like, this pushes the burden on the consumer.
Yeah.
Now, this is an oddity because this is an export, right? Like it's an export, and so the product, let's just, and I know that it was an average 277,000. We don't know if one's more or the other.
I mean,
and all
certainly
that stuff.
Some sell more than the others. Yes,
exactly. Like I could see Jack Daniel's having a big piece.
Yeah, it could be
that's a pretty big piece.
Market share. Sure.
As a consumer,
yeah.
I don't think that you're necessarily going to have the burden with more product coming in because that is supply, which would bring the demand down. Like you were talking about the economics.
Sure. What this move does is, so it's an export. So our tariffs we're not putting a tariff on the whiskey.
Right.
This is a retaliation for our tariffs that we placed on Canadian goods coming in. I know lumber's a big one. Oil and gas, even though that actually is at a 10% rate, that isn't at the 25% rate, the tariffs that are proposed from the United States. This is a retaliation to make the Americans feel some pain. While their consumers won't be able to buy it because they're taking it off the shelves, it is trying to hit, and specifically politically motivated, that it is whiskey is going to be a big part of that, because the British Columbia Premier David Eby, EBY, specifically directed British Columbia liquor stores to, quote, immediately stop buying American liquor from red states. Mm-hmm. So this is a politically targeted retaliation, trying to say the current president is a Republican, target things made in Republican states. So Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana.
Yeah.
That's where a vast majority, I mean, even Texas, if you start adding Texas whiskey into the mix, but I'm just saying the vast majority of American whiskey is coming from red states.
100%.
So that is why it's targeting that.
It's a little iffy with Kentucky because you had mentioned to me prior that they typically will elect a Democrat governor.
No, I wouldn't say typically. They just routinely move back and forth between party. But I think if you look at national politics, there is no doubt, based off presidential elections, national elections like senator, and even the makeup of their congressional delegation, it is a red state in the sense, especially in the targeting by the retaliation from the Canadians. They do have, and I got that question, like, hey, this from a Canadian listener that said that I am a little confused on this one, because if Kentucky is a Democrat governor, wouldn't that mean that is a blue state, not a red state? And so that one is a little trickier for outside observers, is that they do move back and forth.
A buddy from Canada asked that question to you.
I just said that, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, yeah.
But so it's definitely a specific targeting to try and force a political blowback in the United States because it's not hurting American consumers of whiskey. It's hurting the American producers of whiskey. If they're
already
losing $1 billion of revenue going through Canada. Now that's across every brand. Yes, the bigger brands like a Brown-Forman company that has a large portfolio, or Sazerac that has a large portfolio.
Well, you're not going to see a lot of NDPs going up there.
I disagree with that.
A lot? Definitely not as many as we have. Like, I feel like they would be selective.
But I mean, I still think that there is a significant number of NDPs that have international distribution.
Okay.
So,
I mean,
and we could get some people to feedback. Hey, what's the NDP selection look like, you Canada folk? Is it pretty good, pretty mid? What do you know? So I think that's the situation.
Crown Royal. People are going to go into the liquor store and just see Crown Royal be like $100 because of the retaliatory tariffs and be like, that must be good. So we're all gonna. This is
either that or in
perfectly.
all the states, people are going to dump out Crown Royal on TikTok and just show off. But now I do. Here's the other thing, though, the piece, because I believe this was ordered if those tariffs were to go into place,
right? And they potentially couldn't be. However, we now know the plan.
So what we know is that it is a 1-month pause that has been agreed to by the outgoing Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau of Canada. That's another wonky political situation where he has resigned and suspended their parliament pending the new election, which is coming, I believe, at the end of March. He will not be the next prime minister. Little political wonk hat on here. I think he is in a very prime position for his legacy to try and negotiate a permanent deal with the United States.
That would be good for him.
I think, one, it would help his party because it's a coalition government typically in Canada. The parliamentary system, they're not getting to an outright majority with their party, so they have to have another party join them to get that majority within their parliament. And having the outgoing prime minister stave off this tariff war could be really good for him. For one, his legacy, saying, look, I saved this. I saved the economy, which has been a big problem with the Canadian voters and sentiment in polling, is how his government has led the economy recently. I mean, that's been a theme throughout the world, I think. But on top of that, if he can be like the savior, it could help prop up his party. It also could, looking down the road, he's not that old of a guy, could spell a like Winston Churchill style comeback as a parliamentary leader in years to come, if he wants to try and regroup, recenter, let another party or
tell
another leader
sorry.
fail. I mean, he's probably hoping that they don't do great and he can come back in. So I feel like this could be a good thing, a good resolution with Canada. What's looming is that this is now the third trade war, pseudo trade war, short-lived trade war in as many weeks. First,
our biggest trade partners, right? Are those the top three?
Well, the first one was not. The first one was Colombia.
Oh, well,
and that
I was talking about Mexico, Canada, China.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the China one is not. They haven't said much about it. I believe that they're not even supposed to talk with the Chinese officials for a few days. So, but if you look at
so it's just a tweet at this
Colombia one that happened early, resolved itself very quickly. The second one being combined, second and third being China, Mexico, and Canada. Mexico quickly came to an agreement, that 1-month pause, so they could work out a deal, and they agreed to send like 10,000 troops to the U.S. border. So they're already showing some good faith negotiation. And then the Canada one, which followed. The China one, not as interested in. Obviously, Asia is a bigger market than it used to be, but specifically more like Japan is a huge market for American whiskey. I'm not quite sure how the Chinese market is for American whiskey, but all that to say, the big looming storm is the European Union. That is the one that.
Why are we? There we go.
That is the one I think that could cause much more pain. I'm certain the exports, I don't have a figure, are larger to the entire EU than 965 million. So that one I think could be a lot more aggressive. Also, you're dealing with a lot of different countries with a lot of different interests that make up the European Union. It could be a much more trickier, less solvable in a very quick way tariff war coming there. And that could hurt the business side of the producers, especially with the financials that we've seen from 2024. It's a double whammy at that point.
Well, I mean, positive for American whiskey consumers would be such as Jack Daniel's pulled back double the amount of barrels 12 years ago or 10 years ago. They're now going this year in 2025 distribute to overseas the 10-year-old batch 3 product because they do have extra. I think just under half is actually going to that. So they doubled what they did, and almost all of that is headed overseas. Now, if something like that goes into place, either I would have to assume that the price tag would be so much over there that they do pull back some stock and keep it in America. I don't know. That's just a thought. Yeah, that's a thought to have.
There's different scenarios that could play out, right? Because if they do in the EU what Canada was proposing in those provinces, where they're saying we're just not going to buy it anymore. It's not that we're slapping a 25% tariff on it that raises the price for their consumers, so it sells less. Instead, you're seeing we're not purchasing anymore, just a ban effectively on American whiskey sales. That is where the product's not moving over there.
Yeah.
I feel like
that's an aggressive strategy. I mean, have you heard about
I don't believe I mean that didn't happen I think in the 2016 to 2020 tariff wars. I believe that it was just retaliatory tariffs.
Got it. So they weren't pulling things from shelves.
No. So that was a novel move by 3 provinces, not all of Canada, but the regional governments were making that call, and that would keep stock here because they wouldn't be allowed to export it.
Yeah.
If it's a 25% price hike, I mean, sales will dip, but I also don't know that they don't still keep sending what they already have outlaid there until they get raw data that shows, okay, we need to hold some back because we're flooding the market. Yeah. I think that's kind of the that's the wiggle room there.
Side comment here, dude. Canada is one of our biggest aluminum import countries. Am I correct on that?
I don't know. If you read that, I believe you.
I believe so. My buddy Rob told me today, and his brother had worked in the aluminum industry and worked closely with Canada. Now, if the retaliatory tariffs come into play and aluminum sees a 25% jump, like things like beer and cans.
But that's saying we receive from Canada aluminum, or they receive from us?
We receive from, we bring it in.
Yeah, so that automatically, if these were to go into effect, that's not retaliatory tariffs. That is our tariff. Anything we bring
you're right.
in, yeah,
you're right.
Anything we bring in is 25% increase.
You're so right, dude. You're so right. So
typically.
But still, I mean, if that goes into play, if this does end up going to a trade war, pseudo whatever, and there's still conflict there, and all the tariffs come out to play, I mean, you're going to see beer go up. You're going to see the Jack and Coke stuff go up because of the aluminum costs.
Housing. I mean,
I'm not getting into everything. That.
I mean, aluminum is across the board. But anything that you consume how popular now are beer in cans?
100%.
Like beer bottles are passe. Like people don't buy.
They're almost too difficult.
Yeah, they don't buy beer bottles anymore. So like any craft beer you're drinking, which is already expensive.
I do like bottles though.
I do too. But I mean, I'm also a koozie guy.
Well, I mean, it's way easier to go in there and get a daggum suitcase.
Right.
Of
100%.
cans and not.
But yeah, you're
bottles.
right. That would be affecting what we consume. You'd see prices go up on things that come in aluminum. I mean, across the board. So that's kind of where we're at. We're going to keep the story updated as things move on. I know before when we've talked about this angle, we've had some comments that are like, I thought this was about whiskey. You're talking about politics. It's like, no, we talk about whiskey, and this is the culture of it. This is 100% a very relevant topic at the time.
And who else out there is talking about this?
Yeah.
And as smart as Will? Nobody.
Those are two caveats that have to go together to make sense. But there's a lot of people that are much more smart than I am, and there's probably some people talking about it. But when you blend those two together,
I've got a caveat.
that's what you get. All right. Hey, now we've got some
other news.
Just in time for global tariff war.
Seriously.
We've got a couple new releases, and we talked about some new releases last week that were not as – they were more gimmicky, I'd say,
these are
to go for
big
it.
boys coming to play.
This is some stuff that I think was clearly planned well in advance of the – I don't think this is a knee jerk, like let's try to get some stock out there. I think these are releases they probably were. One
planned.
of them 100% was already planned. But there's an interesting caveat. The first one is that this was noticed that they're at the end of January, so the 31st. We're only a few days into February. A new label was approved on the TTB for a brand new Eagle Rare product. This is Eagle Rare aged 12 years.
12 years.
There is no info, no press release. There's nothing on the internet yet about this, just that a label has been approved, as well that it is 95 proof. They didn't go for the full 101, that kind of heritage proof that Eagle Rare 17 moved to, which I think was a brilliant move to go back to what the original Eagle Rare brand was.
Will's upset about that, but honestly, it's like...
why move the proof at all
Well,
for the 12-year if you're not going to... I mean, yeah, I know it's 11 proof points, but this isn't going to be something that's sitting on shelves. This is going to be
snatched up.
This is going to be maybe a quarter release, maybe once a year. I don't know. I doubt it's a once a year because then you're competing with a BTAC and it's like a sub BTAC.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Release.
I'm fine with the 95 proof because if you start getting, this is a 12-year at 101, I feel like it devalues.
The other one is 17 years old.
I know.
That's a whole different ball game. I know. Well, I can read you what's on the back label. I think it's very...
Do it.
It's very similar to what's on, if not word for word. You have an Eagle Rare?
Yeah.
Handy, grab one real quick because we can read and see if this is, if it's the same. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Life, liberty, it's very similar.
It's a placeholder. It's like Lori Lipsum.
Well, this one says life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the cornerstones of the birth of a nation optimized by the American bald eagle. This says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the founding principles of the United States, epitomized by the American bald eagle. So it's the same but different. Like they've just changed up the wording a little bit.
Chat GPT, rewrite.
Yeah, and then down here, everything looks similar, and it says Eagle Rare 12-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon offers a sweet oaky nose, a full complex body with subtle vanilla notes, and a long-lasting rich finish. Reminiscent of fine port wine, this rare whiskey is perfect for savoring neat or over ice. This one says that, of course, feel free to drink Eagle Rare in such classic cocktails as the Manhattan or whiskey sour. But
I'm not putting Eagle Rare in a cocktail. Do you know how many other things?
I know. I'm just trying to say that the 10-year, they're like, it's okay to put this in a cocktail. They deleted that sentence off the 12-year label. So it's coming. Eagle Rare, they're still keeping the 750 milliliter bottles for now. That's on the label as well. I know a lot. I think a lot of companies that haven't made the jump to 700 ml are probably rethinking that right now of that. Because of the entire purpose is to streamline and make it cheaper instead of having to do bottling line changeovers when you're doing export bottles.
Yeah. Because
you have to have two separate bottles for the American market and then everywhere else.
Well,
that's why you see it's a cost-saving mechanism for a lot of these brands that are dropping it. We see it here in America as like shrinkflation Like when you get less chips in your bag of chips, the bag of chips stays roughly the same, but you get less in it. Yeah. This is almost a shrinkflation. They're charging you the same price, but they're cutting 50 mLs, a little bit over 2 ounces out of your whiskey. Eagle Rare still has it. I wonder if some brands that maybe putting
like
that in
every case,
plan.
that's an extra bottle. Like that's a pretty significant number.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be right because 12 times 50 would be 700. Is that right? I mean, that would equal the
600. It's close.
So,
okay, my math is a little close.
Yes, divided by 12.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
So Eagle, here's the deal.
Yeah, it's
Buffalo
Trace 58 milliliters would be per 12. You get to get to 700. So like 13 bottles, every baker's dozen, you're getting an extra bottle of whiskey out of.
Buffalo Trace is playing in a different way right now, just because most, if not all, their products, as far as their like heritage brands are concerned, they sell out wherever they go. Yes, you'll start seeing the Buffalo Traces a little bit more, maybe Eagle Rare, but it's going to take a long, long time, and I don't even know if it gets there, of having those higher end products coming down.
Well, this is, I think, the problem that a lot of people have had with Buffalo Trace for a long time, is that they are very quick to release a slightly different label of one of their products when all of their products still sell out.
Yeah.
So
the people are pissed off about that, and they always are. It's like, why are you offering another Weller?
Exactly. I was going to say, why do you keep adding to the Weller line when Special Reserve and 107 aren't on every shelf?
Yeah.
Like, I can forgive you that 12 isn't everywhere.
Right.
But actually, if you're doing it right, instead of adding single barrel, CYPB, now the 18-year that's coming out
Don't touch that Foolproof. That was a good one.
I love Foolproof. I do love Foolproof, but I wish
that one we're cool with adding.
And that was a good thing. But at the time, then they added several more.
Yeah.
I wish they would get their supply chain in order and get these products back on the shelves. I think with the bourbon bust coming in a year, maybe a little more, then Buffalo Trace Eagle Rare will start being on the shelf again.
Yeah,
I just
think it's going to take longer for them to see that pain than I think some other brands, just because so many brands just fly off the shelf for them.
Yeah,
and so I think all of the people that haven't bought them in a while, as soon as they see it on the shelf, there's a whole demographic of people that used to just buy it. They refuse to buy it off secondary. They will see it in the store and they'll grab it. So I think you're going to see a period of time. I am starting to see like Baby Saz, Buffalo Trace. I am starting to see it more. Yes, both
just
of those.
Walking in. So hopefully,
Baby Saz has been on the shelves for a while.
I think that trend hopefully will continue, and that these products that are very drinkable, very cost effective for what they are, and very quality bourbon. I mean, some of the best in the business. I still stand by that, no matter how frustrating their desire to put out new labels is. I wanted to get back to that. Hopefully, having a 12-year age-stated Eagle Rare doesn't affect the 10-year becoming more available. There's a good chance it does, because that means they were holding back some for an extra 2 years to get it here. And if they want it to continue, I'm looking forward to the press release on this, though. I want to see what their plan is, what they're saying. I would love it to be coupled with like we've maxed out our production on Eagle Rare 10. Like, it's going to be everywhere, and we're adding this. Like, I don't think it's going to say something like that, but that would be great.
That'd be pretty good. Now, Jack Daniels is doing a similar thing, right, with their age series. Like, they're coming out with a 10. They're coming out with 12, 14, 18, 21 is the goal, right? And so I think it's a little different than that, because they have declared way on early, hey, we're going to start doing this. And, hey, we've got a lot of product.
Yeah.
So it's like when they start that process and it begins to increase and increase and increase and increase as far as the stock available for those aged products, then I think it'll kind of come together and make sense, because they do have, like, they don't outside of their distiller series, they don't necessarily offer new products much.
Yeah, and I think that is the difference, is that,
like, you have the Coy Hill, you have the special releases. Those are special releases. I'm talking about, like, some staple annual things that are coming out. Like Coy Hill, one and done. Actually, they circled back and it was the second
did it different, but it's a different thing. That one's a blend.
Yeah,
the others were single barrels. True. The other was like from this middle section. The difference between what Jack Daniel's is doing is that they are saying these are once a year releases. A lot of times Buffalo Trace doesn't say like Weller Single Barrel is a once a year release,
right?
And they just say this is in our portfolio.
Well,
and so expectations aren't properly aligned. Jack Daniel's also, as you mentioned, doesn't have 50 SKUs. Yeah. Buffalo Trace, if you were to count up just in their whiskey portfolio, I'm not talking about everything Sazerac owns. I'm talking about just their whiskey portfolio and just at the Buffalo Trace distillery. If you keep out 1792 and the Bowman distillery, just Buffalo Trace, it could be close to 50 SKUs. It's at least 20. And that's the problem. Jack Daniel's doesn't have that. They've got the old number 7. They've got the single barrel releases, the cask strength, which, I mean, that's still the single barrel. They have the regular strength rye and Tennessee whiskey, and then the cask strength versions. Those are their staple products that you can buy.
And their innovation and their nod to like, hey, here's what we're doing on the side here for fun is those distiller series.
Now, once again, that's why I also separate like Buffalo Trace from that, because then someone could come back and be like, well, it's Brown-Forman, and Brown-Forman has 50 SKUs, and it's like, I'm talking about the singular distillery, and that's why Buffalo Trace, Jack Daniel's is what I'm comparing. Old Forester obviously has a lot more stuff coming out than just like the Jack Daniel's distillery, but they kind of live in their own world. They kind of live in their own vein, and I feel like the independent distilleries make a lot more insulated decisions than what happens with the Sazerac company. I feel like leadership at Sazerac is doing a lot of micromanaging of what and planning, and their marketing team is maybe doing a lot more brand decisions than even the master distiller. I can't speak to that 100%. Like, I know this for a fact.
I mean, it makes sense.
Just from observations, people we've talked to, I have a feeling that it is a different corporate structure, and that is one reason why you are flooded with the SKUs, is that it's the marketing team making a lot of the decisions instead of the master distiller himself. And I think that's the opposite of what you see at something like Jack Daniel's. And I can't speak to Old Forester. We have a good relationship with folks from Brown-Forman, but our real like connections and friends and colleagues, I'd say in some degree, are the folks that work on the Jack Daniel's brand. And that is a wall of separation that I've seen. Is like,
it's honestly,
if you were to ask them like, hey, what's going on with such and such at Old Forester, I have literally no idea. Whereas if you were to ask someone like that at Buffalo Trace, what's happening at 1792, I'm certain that they would know much more.
Yeah.
But different corporate structures, not saying one is wrong, but just one has happened to be a lot more, I would say, friendly to the enthusiast community than the other.
Yep. Speaking of Old Forester,
now we got something for them.
Yeah, we got now here, I will say this before we go in here, because we are discussing a lot of Brown-Forman stuff and Buffalo Trace, and we're, maybe not speaking to them in a good light, or we are speaking to them in a good light. When I saw this release come out from Buffalo Trace and we were discussing like, oh my gosh, it's just another thing. Like, why don't they keep it? Whatever. I was like, man, like how do I feel about that with, a brand that I love, and like the integrity of the distillery is awesome, is Jack Daniel's. But you're right. It's a different mentality. It's a different way. And they've got such few brands in comparison. I think that they're going to actually be able to push out a lot of that exclusive higher end limited release product as they move forward. I don't think that they're going to be like 12-year toasted. You know what I mean?
And to be fair to Jack Daniel's, they had to work really hard to get the whiskey and bourbon community in their camp.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this bourbon boom, or even in the middle of this bourbon boom, it took years where Jack Daniel's wasn't on the radar, because at the time
that was your blue collar go to everyday drinker.
At the time, all they had that you could go buy was Old Number 7 on the shelf. when we started really doing this?
Well, they had Gentleman Jack.
Okay, sorry. I take that back. Yeah, you're right. They had
Gentleman Jack was pretty big.
And then they had a couple of the gold was like a special release.
Yeah, gold Sinatra.
But they weren't everyday things. They weren't loved by the whiskey community by any means. And the opposite is that like Buffalo Trace as a brand had everyone captivated, and they just kept going.
Yeah,
they just kept going. And I once again, people will be like, "Because they're greedy." I don't buy that at all. I think
a business.
It's a business. They had opportunity. There's demand there. Clearly, people still buy out their products,
and because of that,
I don't think
they are well positioned to stomach this longer. As far as a bust is concerned, they're positioned to.
So I think that I don't think it's greed or anything like that. I just think that their strategy was, people like this, let's make something new. And that's creativity to some degree. Some people would argue with me. I don't really care. But the problem though is that and I'm speaking for a lot of people, it burned the consumer that loved to drink even just regular Buffalo Trace. People that like to drink their product. When I could go buy, Weller Special Reserve was everywhere in the little like
Dude, I was getting bottles for $15.
Yeah, it was cheap. It was good. It was kind of like a secret. You know, like, man, this stuff's really good. And it's
nobody
cheap.
knew it was the same mash bill as Pappy, and as soon as that got out, it just started fluttering.
But when you look at that whole thing, is that the way, whether it was on purpose, not on purpose in a negative sense, but like whether it was thought through or not, I do believe they thought they were giving the consumer what they wanted, but it burned a lot of consumers that could no longer just go buy their everyday product. Their everyday product was never meant to be a premium bottle. It was still meant to be a call bourbon that you could go pick up on the shelf and you could have at your house, and it's a quality, well-made product. That being said, the difference with Jack Daniel's is that they had to work very, very hard to break in to the whiskey enthusiast community. They had diehard Jack Daniel fans.
They're still doing it.
I mean,
like they're still in the process doing for sure.
It. But I would say that the leadership there understands
the Coy
that.
Hill changed the game.
I think it started happening before that.
Well, I'm saying
I think
the huge surge, I would argue that Coy Hill. I think it was Coy Hill.
I still go back to when people realized how good the barrel strength single barrels were. That is when people really started to buy into Jack Daniel's.
Right.
And they started
that came way early.
And they're like, this is what we wanted. They're giving us what we want. It's really good. And that really started to open the door for them. But then I agree, their special releases went from being like the Jack Daniel's Gold that wasn't super. Also, the Heritage Barrel. That was their very first
that's right.
limited release that was in that kind of decanter bottle that is the similar decanter bottle as the single barrel.
Is that the one with the malt?
No. There was a single malt that was, but then they started releasing those, and those became very popular, and it was catered to the whiskey enthusiast palate. And I think that once again, they put in the work, and they didn't start flooding. Then they're like, well, this worked. Let's put a bunch of different ones out at one time.
Well,
they still have their single annual single barrel series in that decanter release that's a special release once a year, and then they've started introducing the age series that is still not a everyday product. It's known this is a more limited release. We're going to try to get more out as we can, but they're working into it. And so I don't think people are going to get burned by them in the way that they were burned by some of the other brands.
Yeah. Well, so back in the day, I was thinking, okay, Buffalo Trace is creating, let's just use Weller, okay? They expanded the Weller line. Mm-hmm. Do you think that they were preemptively preparing for the hundreds of millions of dollars sunk into aging barrels of like, we're gonna have so much influx of whiskey that we need like places to throw it?
Yeah. I mean, this is purely speculative. That could be. I think it was a bad call. The way it was rolled out, I think they should have gotten their brands up to speed. And then when needed to get more stock out, do it that way.
Yeah,
Because if
you
you
look
think
at
about
Special
it,
Reserve, what, 6 years old, roughly?
yeah.
OWA, very similar. Like,
yeah, it's just higher proof.
Yeah.
That's the thing, too, is that they could have turned on these spigots whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
It's not like this one's aged an extra 10 years. The only one that currently, besides William LaRue, that's in the Weller line, and I exclude to the forthcoming 18 year because it's a different mash bill. It's a wheat whiskey. But the only one that has to be older is the 12 year. All the others are just manipulating proof. So they legitimately could have gotten 107 and Special Reserve back to a place where price demand equilibrium is supply demand equilibrium, the price equilibrium is there. And then they're like, we have excess stock. Let's introduce a new label. That to me would have been smarter rather than being like, we've put the markers down. Here's where we're eventually going to be able to funnel everything into, because once again, people are like, why are you giving me a new product when I can't get your product?
Yeah.
So
that's the biggest thing.
If that was their thought, and it certainly could have been, it wasn't a great thought.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people online, that's their first go-to. It's like, why are y'all doing that?
Yeah.
To argue my point as far as what I think that they were doing is kind of opening up brands to funnel a ton of whiskey coming in, is because it's not a different aged product stuff. Like, they haven't added an age to any of the new Weller lines. You had the 12 already established. The new stuff, bottled and bond, single barrel, full proof, all that. It's all the same proof.
Yeah. Well,
so now they don't have to logistically
all
figure
the same
out.
age, not all the same proof.
Well,
all of them are different proofs.
All of them are different proofs, yes. But I'm just saying, like, as far as what the product is aging, the proof comes in when they're bottling it, right?
Right.
And so
and that's
you
what
don't
I'm
have to
saying,
logistically change
that could
recipes
have been,
or anything.
That could have been their thought process. I'll give you that. That look, now we have places to funnel, but they didn't need places to funnel. Do that when you do. When you start having stuff sitting on the shelves and the distributor's not taking it, that's when you turn on a new spigot. You still have all the whiskey. You're just manipulating the proof and a new label. Bada bing, bada boom. Put it out the door. That's why, if that was their plan.
But they built scarcity. So when they do flood it.
But there's a blessing and a curse to scarcity. Why? You don't want everything to be scarce.
No.
You want a product mix.
I mean, Fireball pumping out every day, bro.
But within your whiskey line, like, I mean, you learn this in business school. Like, you want products that are available. You don't want everything to be scarce. You want some high-end stuff to be scarce, but you have to have a diverse product mix and things that people can get, or you start losing customers because they forget about you. Yeah. The familiarity is something that you have to build. And if people lose that, or you burn them on it because you keep releasing things that are all scarce. And that's why I do combat people that say they've built scarcity through their entire brand and that's their plan, because those are the types of businesses that fail, because that isn't a good strategy. The strategy is you do have some scarce products that people are then still loyal and familiar and can get your non-scarce products, so that when those are there, they're guaranteed to buy them. Yeah. And so, yes, the Pappy line, the BTAC line, those are supposed to be and should be your scarce products by design. Yeah. They could do an entire brand change and make those available every year that everyone gets a bottle. That wouldn't be a good marketing ploy because it loses its specialness. Right. But you keep those scarce. They're lost leaders, probably. I mean, even
the BTAC line retail price, what, $99.99?
They went up to like $124.99, okay. So it's a little bit more expensive now. But I mean, a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old or a 15-year-old, they're all high-aged, low, high proof, except for Saz and the Eagle Rare is 101 still, but like Weller,
George C. Stagg, Handy, all
barrel proof. They're lost leaders. I mean, they still may turn a profit on it, I don't know, but that's not what's driving the business. That is that's a marketing tool. It is a marketing tool. It's a tasty marketing tool. But
it'll get you drunk, baby.
but it's still, that's the thing. That's why I don't buy for a second that their entire brand strategy is scarcity. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
I think they could not keep up, and then they're making a poor marketing decision by adding new SKUs. But I don't think that they're all thinking we got to keep everything scarce. I don't think that that's a winning strategy, and I don't think that their board of directors and their CEO would say, I love this idea. No one's ever done this before. Let's make something people can't buy.
Yeah.
So
fix it.
Yeah.
Fix it.
All right. Final news story of the day.
Speaking of Brown Foreman,
this is, so, when you do the, like the day after the national championship, in college football, ESPN puts out their way too early top 25.
Oh my gosh.
They do it every year. It's
and they release it, and all of my buddies start texting me. I'm like, y'all are idiots.
Yeah.
Like, this is just clickbait.
No, 100%.
Nobody
I read
knows.
it every time. But this is my way too early info on 2025 birthday bourbon. So we used to do this all the time. We'd be in the thick of the TTB colas, like the label approving website, that what's been publicly approved, and you can go through there and see a ton of brands you'll never see. You also sometimes see they get products approved that never make it to market because they're testing it out. They want it there. I think I would
Or they have to redo the label.
I would also argue some brands, at least in the heyday, would put out labels, they'd get them approved, they'd pay the fee and never go with it just to throw people off the scent. I don't think they're doing that anymore. But
it's not crazy. This is not a crazy stretch.
Yeah, I know. This one, though, they have gotten the label approved for the 2025 birthday bourbon. Every year, September 2nd is when George Garvin Brown's birthday was. He was the founder of Old Forester, and they do the special release of birthday bourbon. So it is also kind of the unofficial kickoff of allocation season.
Yeah, it's a little earlier.
Earlier, this is when the first really sought-after bottle drops. But here's what we've got, because we can look at the label and see what they're doing this year. Historically, Old Forester Birthday Bourbon, most years has been 12 years old. There are some years it's been 13, a few that have been 11 and 10, but the vast majority are 12 years old.
The proof also has been
fluctuates. So here's what we've got. This is these were barreled in 2013, bottled in 2025. This is a 12-year-old birthday bourbon, but with the second lowest proof ever from my research. This one is 92 proof.
And the lowest proof was what? The second ever release, I believe, or the first or second?
It was, in 2003, which I believe the first release was 2002, there was an 89 proof 13-year-old that came out. But I
bet that was delicious.
They have, other than that, the lowest has been 94 proof is what I have seen from, and I got this information from like a Reddit forum where someone put in all the historic proofs. So it isn't, I didn't fact check these. I didn't go through and look for a picture of all of them.
Yeah, and if it's wrong, y'all just leave a comment and tell us what it's supposed to be.
Roughly reliable, but the only one I saw was 2003. There was a 89 proof. And then the youngest was 2004 that was actually 8 years old. Other than that, the vast majority 12 years old with a handful of 13, 10, and 11 thrown in there for good measure.
Wow, an 8-year-old birthday bourbon. That just doesn't seem
And that one was 94
special.
proof. But that was really early when they were doing it. So they may have not kind of built this out. But last year, for contrast, it was a 12-year age state, so 2024, and 107 proof. So that's a pretty big jump or decrease from last year's at 107 to 92 proof. I like the birthday bourbon line. I've had ones I like better than others, but I've never had one that I said, this is bad.
Yeah. I think with the George T. Stagg release, like 1 year they didn't release it.
Right.
It's like it's not ready. So maybe, you end up getting that older product batched in with the newer product that is coming up behind it. And so you get a little bit different age. But like, there's no, that's like a rule. You know what I mean? Like, Eagle Rare is going to be 17 years old.
Yeah.
We're doing it now at 101 proof. And so you might have something older in that batch, but you have to age state it at the lowest age. Here, I feel like Old Forester just doesn't have rules with this special release. It's like, this year it's going to be 17 years old and 20 proof.
Well, it's never been that old. The oldest has been 13, but it's also it bounces around. So I'd really love some more info like from the distillery about the process of where they decide the proof and the age.
All right, I'm sending text.
Here's the other thing. Don't do it right now.
No, I'm not doing it right now.
But
we're with the people.
The interesting thing is to me too that I think historically, birthday bourbon has supposed to have been a representative of a single day of distilling. So it wasn't just a bunch of barrels they were throwing together. And someone may fact check me on that, but I would have to go back and look. But I remember somewhere that was a thing that came along with it too. So they'd go through and maybe test batches of barrels and find the one that was ready.
Yeah.
And then they'd put them together, and then they would. So that's why the age may fluctuate. They're like, this one's really good this year. Let's do this one. It's 12 years old or it's 11 years old, but they kind of know where to go. But then they proof from there. I don't know. It's probably a little fascinating.
You're also needing a certain amount of bottles, as far as like, we kind of need this many bottles to be in the ballpark of what we normally deliver.
Sure.
And so they could take, for the 10-year-old, they could have still taken the 11 and 12-year-old stock and thrown it in the 10, but they needed some extra product to hit those numbers because the 11 and 10 might have had a ton.
But that's my point. If it's a single day of distillation, if that factoid that is somewhere in my brain, but I could be wrong, is true, then it's a true 10-year because all that whiskey is coming from one day. Or if it's all 12, it's all coming from that one day. Once again, haven't checked my facts on that, but I somehow remember that being something.
Hey, just leave a comment, okay?
Yeah, they'll let us know.
You let us know.
Actually, we'll get a bunch of actually.
Our historian Kevin might chime in.
But that's it. So the TLDR version of that is that 2025 birthday bourbon coming out September 2nd appears like it is going to be a 12-year-old bourbon with a 92 proof that
point.
It has and carries with it along with it as you drink it. Proof point. That's it, though. You want to go to the 15?
Let's do it. Hit the music.
And we're back. No, wait, time out. What is that called?
This?
No, Booker's the Reserve.
Yeah, the Reserve.
I want to see how much it cost.
I believe this was a couple $100.
I think it was like $250.
I don't know if it was.
Here it is. Let's see the price. $130.
$130. Okay.
I thought it was more than that.
We might have paid $150 in the gift shop.
All right.
And we're back from the 15, Will.
That's my line. Some say we never left.
I love it. That's what I wanted you to say.
All right. So we're drinking Booker's The Reserves. This is batch 2024. Looks like a standard Booker's bottle, but it's kind of this like chocolate brown wax instead of the black wax. It's got like a brown label. It's cool. It's 8 years, 2 months, and 12 days age. So it's got a little bit higher age statement on it than the Bookers you'd buy in a normal batch.
We got this early. We've been nursing it for a while, obviously.
When we went on that man trip.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it yet. So we were just like, let's just drink this tonight. We know it's not like, it just released.
125.9 proof. 77 corn, 13 rye, 10% malted barley.
Dude. This is Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
There's 20,000 flavors.
So this is
20 of them.
This says the SRP is about 130. I think you said you paid like 150 in the gift shop, something around there.
Yeah, it definitely was not 130.
Some reason I thought it was over 200, but hey, 130 is actually better.
We grabbed this the same
and
day.
That was 200.
This was $200. Yeah.
All right, so smell it.
I mean, little spice in it. I like that. You got some good oak in there, but very like vanilla-y oak. Are you getting tobacco at all? I'm not getting like tobacco.
I get a little bit of cinnamon. Like
cinnamon
like,
is there.
Not like candy cinnamon, but like the actual spice cinnamon.
Yeah, like the manly one.
Yeah. Like what you put in the dadgum.
I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that.
So this, though, when you get the
There's
tag,
some
'cause
cola
I don't
notes.
think you have the tag anymore, but it actually has like 8 different barrels in it because it's a batch.
Yeah.
The oldest is 14 years, 4 months. There's a 10-year, 9-year, a few 9 years, and a few 8 years, but it's age stated 8 years, 2 months, 12 days because of the youngest whiskey being that.
Yep. It's also the lowest floor. It's on the 4th floor, so it's like maturing. Like so, it could even be like younger tasting. You know, way less oak influence.
Yeah, everywhere I'm seeing, because I didn't remember how much it was paid for, but it does appear to be 130 is the SRP. We could have said 150 because it was after tax. Actually, sometimes gift stores have to charge a little bit more, so that they're not competing with the liquor store.
Heaven Hill does.
Yeah. No, I think it's a law. I mean, I think it's a law in Kentucky.
I don't care.
I
don't care about laws.
So
until a cop shows up on my front door.
I want every Booker's to taste like this.
It is fabulous.
It is absolutely spectacular. The color is very good. It's not super dark.
It's like a semi-aged penny.
Yeah. It's like
that penny's been under your refrigerator.
Patinaed. That oxidized penny.
That penny has nestled up to that donut underneath your fridge for probably 10 years.
Yeah.
It comes out.
Now, it's not getting to
like
that old green stage like the Statue of Liberty.
No, you don't want to oxidize.
I mean, that is still starting to oxidize when it's getting a little brown. Well, but it is not, I mean, it's a pretty color.
It's not over-oxy.
It's not a brand new penny either. It's not super shiny copper.
No, that's not a brand new penny.
No, these are some pipes that your cousin stole out of the AC unit.
Well, we did it with washer and dryer.
Not we, your cousin.
Which one?
The one that was stealing copper. Which one? The one I'm talking about. That one.
Well, I've told our Facebook group I won't talk about it.
I get a little bit of tobacco, but it is like cinnamon, tobacco. It's sweetness. It's not as earthy, gritty as Booker's.
I'm getting that oak, which is probably like, you're going to get a little tobacco notes to it, but it's so subtle to me.
It's a lot sweeter than a Booker's normally is.
I agree with that, Jim.
Yeah.
Like a honey sweet.
Yeah.
Like a honey, it's a honey cinnamon sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you poured this blind for me, I would not peg the distillery as Jim Beam. Not in a million years.
I don't know.
No, because I normally get like peanut and earthy notes and like sometimes some dirt, not in a bad way.
I might get thrown off with like an Elijah Craig barrel proof.
See, those still have some more earthiness to it. This one is sweeter. I don't know where I'd put it, but I don't think I'd put it at Jim Beam or Heaven Hill.
I mean, there's a slight nutty undertone to this.
It drinks more like a George T. Stagg to me. That sweeter barrel proof.
Okay.
That sweeter barrel proof.
Pump the brakes.
I don't know, man. If you were to blind me on this and except for like a handful of George T. Stagg releases, I would like to be blinded on that. I would. I mean, do you have a George T. Stagg here? Open? We'll do it next week. I'll have a couple open.
You do? You have a couple?
I have at least one that's open.
Dude, a lot of people floating out here, they took advantage of my George C. Stagg.
I definitely have at least one George C. Stagg open because I opened it at Christmas. I'd been saving it to like have with some family. So I had that. I don't know if I have any others, but I will bring that over next week if I remembered. And I want you to blind me on it because without context, I don't know if I'd be able. I probably will because this is a year, but I don't know. This is really, really good.
You're saying you're getting GTS vibes.
Yeah,
I totally get it. But when you,
especially because it's sweeter than a normal Booker's. Like
I get that, but the mouthfeel viscosity of a George T. Stagg is nowhere near
this
that.
one doesn't bite for 125. This is a really solid pour. I mean, I've been wrong before, but we've called things BTAC killers in our history.
Yeah,
this one for me, this is a solid buy. 130, worth every penny to me.
Yeah, I do.
Especially
I do
compared to, unfortunately, the Booker's price is too high now. It's $99, I think, for a Booker's, which was they actually raised.
You go
their price
$30 more
early.
to get this.
Yeah,
every time.
Done deal.
Every time.
Hopefully, that is one thing I would love to see happen. Is make Booker's $60 again? That would be a good turn of events.
Will, I hate to break it to you.
They're not going to.
There's they will fall down and they will never recover.
I don't know.
They'll lose so much money. So much money.
No, I don't think
it's
so.
$60?
It's 6-year whiskey, Grease.
I understand.
It's 6-year whiskey. You know what?
The
Get
box
rid of the box. Get rid of the box.
Okay, now
no
we're
one
talking.
wants the box anyways.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, you know what people do with the box? They throw it away.
Yep, they do.
And you know what? You can't even find it on the shelves anymore.
Ooh, I'm going to take the box and make it into a candle. I'm
We
going to
did
try
it
to
one
save
time.
It.
It was fine.
I use it for a pencil holder.
It's a really unsafe candle holder we found out. We burnt down the living room. It's fine.
I don't like our attitude.
All right, folks. Grease, you buy bar pass on this.
Man, I'm a buy at 130. I don't buy whiskey over $100 comfortably, but I'm pretty comfortable at paying $130
Yeah, it's a
for
really
that.
solid pour for that.
Yeah.
All right, folks. If you like this, go ahead and give us a thumbs up.
Thumbs up, like,
subscribe, and ring the bell.
And if you want to support our show to legitimately keep the lights on, you can go to patreon.com/thepodcast. There we have really fun like Zoom calls and stuff at certain levels where we do at least once a month with everybody. It's a really great community engagement kind of thing that we have been doing for years, and we have friendships that will legit last a lifetime from that experience. So if you're looking for a lot of good people that love whiskey, that don't necessarily want to pad their pockets, but we're here to drink it and open it up together and enjoy it, that is your people. It's unbelievable how many friends that we are so close to have come out of that. So if you're looking for that, come and support us, patreon.com/thepodcast.
And one more thing I'd add to that is that I don't know if we've ever really described what those look like. A lot of times, it is just that, just us hanging out. Sometimes Grease and I get on a tear of telling stories that are ridiculous we can never tell here. Sometimes it's going around the room. What's everyone drinking? And then going from there. It is just a conversation.
Sometimes we get a new person coming in there and everybody's like, I need to know what your story is.
Yeah, we need to know that situation real
fast. So if you're an introvert, it's just, let us know before you get in there, or we're all going to be like,
you cool?
Yeah, you cool?
Yeah.
Are we good?
But it's a fun time. It's not if you're a casual whiskey person, but you feel like you like this community, I think you'll like it too. It's not like we get in there and start like comparing bottle notes and tasting notes. It's nothing like that. It's just chill. It's just a hanging out and having a good time.
One of my favorite things about that community too is that we've got people in Canada, California, like across the U.S., right? Far away from Nashville, Tennessee. And we're able to actually have discussions about what's hitting their market, like what's sitting on the shelf. How are you seeing the difference in the whiskey community? What is really popping? What is not? What a lot of people have tasted the whiskey that you might be hunting. They might save you hundreds of dollars. So anyway, come and save hundreds of dollars with us. Patreon.com/thepodcast.
We don't know Jack,
but we'll drink it.